This video was originally supposed to be something very, very different, but looking around the community, looking at my comments, Twitter, Reddit, you name it, there's one thing going around the Call of Duty community faster than almost anything I've ever seen before, and that's the fact that there is no mini-map in Call of Duty Modern Warfare. What? Now, if this is the first you're hearing of this, you're probably pretty shocked, but if you've watched any gameplay or pretty much watched any YouTuber's video, they've probably all talked about it. But I wanted to make a video discussing whether or not this is going to be the downfall of Modern Warfare, or whether or not they should bring back this minimap. Yesterday, I ran a poll over on Twitter asking whether or not you hated the idea of having the minimap gone in Modern Warfare, and basically it was a pretty even split. 31% of people said that they liked it, 38% of the people say they hated it, and 31% say they don't care either way. To me, this is a hard thing to get across because most people have not played this game, and I think a very different opinion comes across after you do play the game, because it feels really weird without a minimap. And I wanted to take a minute, just this video, to explain my overall thoughts of the minimap, whether or not it should be there, and why I think that. And I think that's the most important part of this entire video, is the why. So, without further ado, let's dive into it and talk about a minimap. So way back in May, when I first went to check out Modern Warfare, the developers showed us the game, we played it a little, and the first question I asked is, why was there no minimap? And the response was basically, the minimap has become a crutch within Call of Duty, and they wanted to remove that crutch because it would change the way that the game felt and the way that people played. Specifically, they were getting at new players. When players have played the game for a long time, they get good at reading minimaps. I'm one of those players. I love minimaps because of that. It helps me in many situations. And by removing that, they are saying that new players would be a little bit more on an even playing field with those veteran players, which is somewhat true, but at the same time, it also makes it more difficult to learn the maps. It makes it harder for those newer players to learn how to play the game. And I don't think that's what they want either. And on top of that, it just frustrates those veteran players. So instead of players constantly looking at the mini-map to figure out where the enemy team is spawning, they wanted the players focusing on the actual game as opposed to focusing on the mini-map. And that makes sense. It really does. A lot of people focus on that mini-map waiting for red dots to pop up. Either your enemies shoot or they appear on a UAV and then you go and attack them. But the mini-map has been there in almost every Call of Duty game for a much bigger reason than that. And I'm not sure whether the developers realize that in removing it, it changes Call of Duty as a whole. Now, the first reason why I think players like a mini-map in Call of Duty is it helps out new players. It makes it so that learning the maps is easier, you can know where to traverse, you know where you can't go, you know where you can go, and it makes things a lot simpler for new players. To me, that's not the most important reason for having a mini-map, but it's a reason nonetheless, so it should be said. Now, I think the majority of players think that mini-maps are important is because of the red dots, to be able to see where your enemies are and where you should be going. But once again, I do not think that's the most important reason for having a minimap. To me, the most important reason to have a minimap is because it actually tells me where my teammates are. It tells me where my teammates are spawning, where they're dying, and where I should and shouldn't be going. It tells me how to read spawns, where the enemies are spawning, and all of that information, when a minimap is taken away, is gone. All of that information I have to guess for. Now, what they replaced it with is what you're seeing on screen at the top in the middle is a compass. It shows what's in front of me and if there's enemies shooting off to the left, right. It doesn't show where my teammates are. Now, this game is kind of a bad example because my team has had a UAV up the entire time, and don't worry, we'll get to that. But when that UAV is gone, like it is right now, all I know is that there's a player in front of me. I don't know where my teammates are. I don't know where they're spawning. I just kind of have to guess. So what does that make me do? It makes me slow down. It makes me stop and not run into this building immediately because I don't know what's there. I don't know if my teammates are upstairs. I don't know if they're in the back. I don't know where they are. So I have to make my decisions based on what I am seeing on screen. And with that limited information, it forces me to play slower. Now, one of the biggest complaints I've seen people saying about the gameplay of Modern Warfare is that it looks slow. And based off of playing it, the game isn't that slow, but you have to make decisions slower because of that lack of minimap. I think the game does play slower, not because the game itself is slow or the time to kill is slow. In fact, the time to kill is very, very quick, but because that minimap is not there and most players are going to have a lack of information, you have to play slower. And that, I think, is a bad thing. Now, here's what makes it even more confusing is I believe some people talked to developers, and the developers said that they were thinking that competitive was going to have a minimap available and regular gameplays like public matches were not going to have a minimap available. Once again, what? Now, the reason why I say that is because if we're being honest, that makes zero sense to me. If you want your game to be played a certain way without a minimap, why would you make competitive players or let competitive players play with one? That makes zero sense. On top of that, for years, there's been problems with this gap between competitive play and public matches and how they are completely asymmetrical when they take out certain guns, perks, and things like that. Now it would be even further from that because the lack of minimap or addition of minimap in competitive play. That decision would make no sense. Now, that hasn't happened yet. I just thought I would mention it. So as you can probably tell from everything I've said so far, I am completely on the side of the fence of I want the minimap back. I would like to see it there at the launch of the game, or even better in the beta coming up on September 12th. However, I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second just to put the other side into perspective as well. Clearly, Infinity Ward wants their game to be played differently than every other COD before. They want it to be seen different, and they want it to change. And one way of doing that is to remove the minimap, and it slows down the play. It would also reward players who use either personal UAVs or UAVs to then get that additional information and then be able to play more aggressively, be able to tell where their team is spawning, and therefore tell where the enemies are spawning. It also puts more emphasis on situational awareness. It would make it so that players who are using a headset have an even bigger advantage because you wouldn't be able to see the enemies on that mini-map and be able to tell exactly where they are. On top of that, they definitely have a point to where the mini-map has become a crutch. Black Ops 4 is a perfect example of that. With Fog of War in the game, you can always tell when there's an enemy around you because of that Fog of War. I do believe that that has become a crutch, but I don't think that means the minimap needs to be removed altogether. In fact, I believe that removing the minimap actually creates more of a crutch to use a UAV or team UAV or advanced UAV, and that I think would be even more of a problem, because personally, I like to be able to make my class the way I want it. I like to be able to play the way I want to, but if I have to use a personal UAV or a team UAV or an advanced UAV constantly to be the best that I can possibly be, all of a sudden I can't use other kill streaks like a Harrier, like an AC-130, like Juggernaut, the things that I find fun in the game, because to constantly have the minimap up, I then have to use UAV, especially if I'm a solo player. So the question is, does the minimap need to be in the game? And I've seen a lot of people say that in videos. T-Mart was one of the examples that I saw. He said that the UAV needs to be in the game for it to be good. I don't think that is the case. I don't think it has to be in there, but the game changes drastically by not having it. It forces players to have less information and therefore play slower, camp more, not move as much, not be able to play as aggressive as they want to. On top of that, it forces players to use streaks like personal UAVs, like UAVs, and not be able to use those higher streaks like an AC-130, like a Juggernaut, like an emergency airdrop, because they are forced to use those UAVs. I think that also slows down the game as well. Because the the minimap is gone, it forces the game to be slower. And that is the decision that Infinity Ward will have to make. Do they want that slower game, or do they want a faster paced game with the mini-map there? And I think, as most of you can probably tell by this commentary, I would personally like that faster game. Now, I'm a man that doesn't just like to complain, I like to come up with solutions. And I think that it's very hard for the viewers of this video to make a informed decision without actually playing the game. So Infinity Ward or Activision, if you are listening to this video, here's what I would do. I would launch the beta the first couple of days with no minimap. See what people think of it. I personally believe you are going to get an ass load of complaints about it. So many complaints that you won't even see any other complaints, because that is all people will be talking about. I've played the game without a minimap. It is slow, it is weird, it is very odd to get used to, and I don't think people are going to like it. The next weekend, add back the minimap, or maybe even the second day of the beta, add the minimap back. I would bet that in that second day, the kills per game go up, the score per minute goes up because players are playing faster. I am guessing you see people play your game in a whole different way, and I'm betting you like it. And by the end of that second day or second weekend of the beta, when the minimap is there, I am betting that you will never take it away again. But that's just my opinion. Maybe I'm completely wrong, and if I am, you can let me know what you think down in the comments below. It's definitely a big change to the game. I would like to see the minimap come back. Whether it will or not, that I'm not 100% sure. So like I said, let me know what you think down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you could hit that like rating. And also, if you want to stay up to date on everything Modern Warfare, make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you have notifications on. But guys, I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, guys, peace out.
We are reaching for the stars, but we're making this to us.